Hey guys, tonight we step into a crime scene so pristine, so utterly flawless, it feels more like an art installation than a homicide. Imagine a world scrubbed clean of clues, where the only thing left behind is a single, confounding object that screams with silent meaning. This is a story about a detective who saw what everyone else missed, and a killer who was undone not by a fingerprint, but by a ghost. It's a strange one, so I'll give you a cheeky warning. You probably shouldn't be listening to this alone. The silence in your own room might start to feel a little heavy. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support means the world. And while you're at it, drop a comment with your city and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see where in the world our little community is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first view of the penthouse apartment is through the eyes of the initial patrol officers, and what you see is nothing. Not nothing in the sense of emptiness, but in the sense of absolute, sterile perfection. The walls are a stark gallery white. The floors are polished concrete that reflect the recessed lighting like a dark, still lake. There is no clutter, no stray papers, no dusty corners, no personal trinkets. The air itself smells clean, sharp, with the lingering sense of lemon and ammonium. This is the home of Julian Croft, a man who curated his life as meticulously as he curated his renowned collection of minimalist art. And there he is, Julian Croft, sitting in a stark black leather armchair that looks more like a piece of sculpture than a place to rest. He's dressed in cashmere sweater and tailored slacks. His silver hair is perfectly coiffed. His hands are resting on the armrests, his head tilted slightly to the side, as if he's just drifted off to sleep while admiring the single, massive blood-red painting that dominates the opposite wall. It's a scene of unnerving tranquility. If not for the 911 call from his business manager, who hadn't heard from him in 2 days, you'd think he was just napping. The detectives arrive, led by a man named Detective Miller. He's a veteran, with tired eyes that have seen too many messy, chaotic, and brutally human crime scenes. This is something else entirely. It feels alien. He does a slow 360-degree turn in the center of the living room. No signs of forced entry. The windows are sealed. The door was double bolted from the inside, a fact that has the patrol officers scratching their heads. The high-tech security system, a fortress of digital protection, shows no alerts, no logged entries, no corrupted data. It's as if the killer simply materialized through the walls. Then the medical examiner arrives, and the illusion of peace is shattered. With a practiced eye, she finds it. A tiny, almost invisible puncture mark on the back of Croft's neck, hidden just below the hairline. A pinprick. She suspects a fast-acting, untraceable poison. Suddenly, the lack of a struggle isn't peaceful. It's terrifying. Julian Croft never even saw it coming. The perfect death to match the perfect life. An ironic, chilling symmetry. But here's the thing about perfection. It's fragile. The slightest imperfection can unravel the entire composition. And in this gallery of a crime scene, there is one single discordant note. On the leather ottoman in front of Julian Croft's chair, placed dead center, is a shirt. It's a simple, gray cotton t-shirt. It's not from a luxury brand. The tag, still attached, shows it's from a generic big box store. And it's folded. Not just folded, but folded with the kind of geometric precision you see in military barracks. Every crease is sharp, every edge aligned, a perfect square of gray against the black leather. Miller stares at it. This one object doesn't belong. A quick check of Croft's walk-in closet confirms. A sea of silk, bespoke suits, and hand-stitched Italian shoes. Not a single t-shirt in sight, let alone a cheap gray one. This shirt is an intruder, an anomaly. It's the only thing in the entire apartment that feels wrong. The forensic team treats the shirt like a holy relic. They know that under the legal doctrine known as the fruit of the poisonous tree, Any evidence improperly collected can be thrown out of court, contaminating every lead that stems from it. They carefully photograph it, document its exact position, and then, using sterile tongs, place it in a specialized evidence bag, sealing it off from the world. As they work, Miller just watches the empty space on the ottoman where the shirt used to be. The other detectives are frustrated, talking about ghosts and professional hits. They have no DNA, no prints, no weapon, no witnesses, no motive. They have a vacuum. Some criminologists have a theory for scenes like this, an ongoing debate in the field. They argue that a crime scene can be too clean, that the absence of evidence is in itself a form of evidence, a deliberate, staged emptiness designed to disorient and overwhelm investigators. It's a conscious act of psychological warfare. The killer didn't just clean up after themselves, they sculpted the scene, leaving behind a single bizarre calling card. A perfectly folded, cheap gray shirt. What is it? A message? A trophy? A mistake? Or is it the thread that, if pulled, will unravel this entire perfect crime? As the first night of the investigation winds down, you're left in that silent, sterile penthouse, with the ghost of a man and the ghost of a clue. And you can't help but feel that the killer isn't just good, they're arrogant. And arrogance, as you know, is always the first mistake.
The days bleed into a week, and the Julian Croft case grows colder with every passing hour. The media, catching wind of the baffling lack of clues, has a field day. They call it the Penthouse Phantom murder, splashing Croft's chiseled, wealthy face across every news channel and website. He's become a local legend, a ghost story for the rich. In the squad room, the case is a source of quiet frustration, a black hole that has swallowed thousands of man-hours with nothing to show for it. Leads are followed into oblivion. Croft's financials are impeccable. His business dealings aggressive but legal. His personal life, a string of polite, amicable breakups with women who describe him as distant and impeccably private. No enemies, no debts, no dark secrets. The man was as clean as his apartment. And for Detective Miller, this pristine vacuum is maddening. You can see it in his office, a space that serves as the perfect ironic counterpoint to the crime scene. Where Croft's penthouse was a study in minimalist white, Miller's cubicle is an explosion of controlled chaos. Piles of files lean like ancient towers. Old coffee cups form a ceramic graveyard, and the air hangs thick with the scent of stale paper and determination. Yet in the center of this mess, on a small, cleared patch of his desk, sits a single 8x10 photograph. It's a police photo, stark and clinical, of the neatly folded gray t-shirt on the black leather ottoman. It's the first thing Miller looks at in the morning and the last thing he sees before he goes home. His partner, Detective Sanchez, a younger, by-the-book detective, thinks Miller's losing it. "You're getting tunnel vision, man," Sanchez says, leaning against the cubicle wall. "It's a known phenomenon. We're so desperate for a lead that we're staring at a meaningless shirt like it's the Rosetta Stone." This is a real danger in police work, investigative tunnel vision, where a fixation on one theory or piece of evidence causes detectives to ignore or misinterpret other, potentially crucial information. Sanchez wants to go back to the basics, re-interview the business manager, dig into Croft's distant relatives, anything to generate a tangible, old-fashioned lead. Miller just shakes his head, not taking his eyes off the photograph. "It's not meaningless," he mutters. "It's the one thing he left, the one thing that wasn't supposed to be there. It's a signature." This sparks a quiet debate that has simmered in law enforcement for decades, the role of intuition. Experts still argue whether a detective's gut feeling is a legitimate tool, a form of rapid subconscious pattern recognition, built on years of experience, or if it's just a dangerous cognitive bias, leading investigators down rabbit holes based on emotion rather than fact. Miller's betting his reputation on the former. He feels it in his bones. That shirt is screaming, and he's the only one who can hear it. Then, the full forensic report on the shirt lands on his desk, and it's a gut punch. Sanchez reads it over his shoulder and lets out a sigh of vindication. See? Nothing. The report is almost unbelievable. The shirt is clean. Not just clean, but forensically sterile. There is no DNA, no hair, no fibers from the killer or from anywhere else for that matter. No skin cells, no saliva, no sweat. It's as if the shirt was created in a vacuum and teleported to the scene. The killer didn't just wipe their prints, they erased their very biological existence from the fabric. It's a dead end so profound, it feels like a personal insult. An ironic twist. The only clue is a thing defined by its complete absence of clues. But then Miller sees it. Tucked away at the bottom of the report is an addendum from the lab's senior chemist. It's an unusual detail, a footnote of pure strangeness. The note explains that while a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer found no identifiable organic compounds, the lab technicians reported a faint, yet distinct, and complex odor emanating from the fabric when it was first unsealed. They couldn't classify it. It wasn't a cologne or a detergent or a chemical they had in their database. It was described in the notes as a bizarre combination. Something dry and earthy, like desert soil after a rain, something sharp and metallic, like an industrial solvent, and something else, a faint, sweet, almost floral note underneath it all. The smell was too faint to analyze chemically, but it was undeniably there. It was a ghost in the machine. This note changes everything for Miller. The killer hadn't erased everything. They'd left their smell, an invisible fingerprint. He feels a surge of adrenaline, the first spark of hope in a week, but when he presents this to his captain, the reaction is not what he hoped for. The captain, a man perpetually squeezed between budgets and public pressure, throws his hands up in exasperation. A smell? Miller, what am I supposed to do with a smell? We have nothing. The DA is breathing down my neck. The mayor is calling twice a day. I need evidence, not aromatherapy. The meeting ends with an ultimatum, another ironic twist in a case full of them. The captain gives Miller 48 hours. 48 hours to turn this phantom smell into a concrete lead. If he can't, the Croft case is officially being moved to the cold case unit. The shirt will be logged, boxed, and forgotten in the dark, climate-controlled purgatory of the evidence warehouse. He's being told to drop his obsession. That night, you see Miller sitting alone in his chaotic cubicle, the entire squad room dark and silent around him. The city lights twinkled outside his window. He's just staring at that photo of that perfectly folded gray shirt. The clock is ticking. His gut, his career, and justice for Julian Croft are all on the line, all tied to an invisible, unidentifiable scent. He's out of conventional options, so he decides to try an unconventional one. He picks up his phone, his thumb hovering over the contact for a name he hasn't spoken in years, a name that most cops laugh and most prosecutors cringe. He's about to make a call that could solve the perfect murder or make him the biggest joke in the precinct.
The name on his phone screen is just a single initial, A. Miller hasn't called this number in almost a decade. He presses the button before he can second-guess himself. The line rings once, twice, then a click. No greeting, just silence on the other end. Miller takes a breath. "It's Miller," he says into the quiet. "I've got one for you. A clean room, one object, they left a smell." A long pause stretches from the other end of the line, so long that Miller thinks the call is dropped. Then, a soft, raspy voice, barely a whisper, says, "Where?" And the line goes dead. The next morning, Miller walks into Captain Davis's office with a purpose that borders on aggression. Sanchez is already there, looking like he's been summoned to the principal's office. The file for the Croft case sits on the captain's desk, looking thin and pathetic. Miller doesn't wait for an invitation. "I have a lead," he says, his voice flat. Captain Davis leans back in his chair, a weary and dangerous look in his eyes. "Don't waste my time, Miller. Your 48 hours are burning. Did you find the witness, a transaction, a hidden camera we missed?" "No," Miller says, placing his hands on the captain's desk. "I found the scent, and I know a man who can read it." Sanchez visibly winces. The captain just stares at Miller, his expression unreadable. "A man who can read a scent? Are you talking about a canine unit? We can get a dog in there, but the scene is a week old, and it's been compromised by a dozen officers." "Not a dog," Miller says, bracing himself. "A man. A human sense specialist." The captain's laugh is short and brutal. It's not a sound of amusement. It's a sound of disbelief and contempt. "You want to bring in a professional smeller? Is that what you're telling me? After a week of nothing, your big break is to bring in a psychic who uses his nose?" This is the heart of the problem. While scent evidence collected by police canines is a well-established and legally admissible tool, particularly in tracking suspects or locating remains, the idea of a human performing a similar feat is legally uncharted territory. It falls into a gray area of forensic science. For evidence to be admissible in court, it must meet what's known as the Daubert standard, a real legal doctrine established in a 1993 Supreme Court case. The standard requires that any scientific testimony or evidence must be derived from methods that are scientifically valid, meaning they're testable, have been peer-reviewed, have a known error rate, and are generally accepted by the scientific community. A dog's nose is a known quantity. A man's nose? That's just an opinion. It's not psychic, it's physiological, Miller argues, his voice rising with passion. Some people have a hyper-developed olfactory system. They can be trained to isolate and identify compounds the same way a wine sommelier identifies grapes and terroir. A wine sommelier? The captain scoffs, picking up the file and dropping it back on the desk with a thud. This is a murder investigation, not a tasting menu. The DA would laugh us out of the room. It's junk science, Miller. This is the crux of the debate that rages in forensic circles. Experts still argue whether human scent profiling can ever be anything more than a subjective art form. Can you put a man on the witness stand and have him swear that he smelled a unique combination of, say, cedarwood, motor oil, and anxiety? It sounds ridiculous. And yet there are documented cases where such savants have provided crucial, case-breaking leads, even if that evidence can never be presented to a jury. It's an investigative tool, not courtroom evidence. Then Miller plays his ace, an odd, almost forgotten detail from his past. 10 years ago, the Southside warehouse fires. An arsonist was hitting abandoned properties, never left a trace. Except at the third scene, the fire marshal noted a strange, sweet smell in the air. We all thought it was just chemicals from the plastics that burnt. He pauses, looking directly at the captain. I brought him in then, unofficial. He smelled a piece of scorched curtain and told me the arsonist used a specific, rare blend of frankincense and myrrh incense to start the fires. A week later, we found the guy selling that exact custom blend at a flea market. It was the arsonist's nephew. We cracked the case. There's a silence in the room. Sanchez looks at Miller with new eyes. The captain's cynical expression softens, just a fraction. He remembers the case, but not that detail. An ironic twist, Miller's obsession is rooted not in a wild guess, but in a past success so strange he never dared put it in an official report. The captain looks from Miller's intense, pleading face and to the pathetically thin file on his desk. He's staring at a career-stalling dead end. The Penthouse Phantom is making him look incompetent. The media's circling. He's out of options. He's a by-the-book cop about to be ruined by a case with no pages in the book. In an act of pure, calculated desperation, he makes a decision. Fine, he says, the word tasting like acid in his mouth. You get your nose. You have until your 48-hour clock runs out. That's 24 hours from now. He gets one shot at the shirt. But Miller, this is on you. It doesn't go in any official report until it produces a verifiable physical lead. If this turns into a circus, it's your badge on the line. Now get out of my office. Miller nods once, a wave of relief so profound, it almost makes him dizzy. He turns and walks out, Sanchez trailing behind him, shaking his head in a mixture of awe and terror. Miller's already pulling out his phone. He has the green light. He's about to unleash the most unconventional weapon in his arsenal on the most perfect crime he's ever seen. The clock is ticking, and the ghost hunter is on his way.
The man who arrives at the forensics lab the next morning is not what you expect. You might picture a flamboyant figure, someone dressed like a bohemian artist, all scarves and dramatic flair. Instead, the man who introduces himself as Abram is aggressively, almost painfully ordinary. He's of average height and build, with thinning hair and a face that seems designed to be forgotten. He's dressed in a simple gray suit that mirrors the very shirt he's here to examine. His only defining feature is a profound stillness. He moves with a slow, deliberate grace, and when he speaks, It's in that same soft, raspy whisper from the phone call. Miller and Sanchez meet him in a small, sterile examination room, the kind typically used for analyzing sensitive documents. The air is filtered. The surfaces are stainless steel. In the center of the table, under a glass cloche like a morbid museum exhibit, sits the evidence bag containing the shirt. Abram doesn't look at Miller or Sanchez. He doesn't even seem to register their presence. His entire focus is on that plastic bag. "The room," Abram whispers, his voice barely disturbing the air. "Describe the room where it was found." Miller, accustomed to Abram's eccentricities, begins to describe the penthouse. He talks about the white walls, the polished concrete, the minimalist art, the lingering smell of ammonia and lemon cleaner. He describes the black leather ottoman, the position of the body, the sealed windows. Sanchez watches this exchange with undisguised skepticism, shifting his weight from one foot to another. To him, this feels like a psychic's cold reading, gathering contextual clues. Abram listens without a single change in his expression, his eyes half closed as if he's visualizing the space. When Miller finishes, Abram nods slowly. "The cleaners," he says. "They're a problem. They create noise. Ammonia blinds the top notes. Lemon is a persistent bass note. We'll have to listen underneath it." Listen. He uses the word listen to describe smelling. This is his first of his odd methods. To Abram, scent is not a sense you experience passively, it's a language you actively decipher, a symphony of molecules with structure, texture, and meaning. He pulls a small velvet pouch from his suit pocket. From it, he removes a pair of thin white cotton gloves and a small silver device that looks like a high-tech tuning fork. He places the gloves on his hands with surgical precision. He approaches a table. "Permission to open the seal," he asks, not of Miller, but of the empty room itself. Miller nods. Abram carefully cuts the evidence tape with a small blade, his movements economical and precise. He doesn't remove the shirt from the bag. Instead, he simply opens the Ziploc-style seal, creating a small gap. He leans forward, his face hovering about a foot above the opening. He closes his eyes, and he waits. For a full 2 minutes, he remains motionless, simply breathing in the air escaping from the bag. Sanchez glances at Miller, raising an eyebrow that clearly says, "You've got to be kidding me." Miller gives a subtle shake of his head, a silent command to stay patient. Abram isn't smelling. He's acclimatizing. He's letting the noise, the scent of the plastic bag, the sterile lab air, the memory of the cleaners, fade into the background so he can focus on the signal. Then he picks up the small silver tuning fork-like object. He presses a small button on its side, and it emits a low, almost subsonic hum. This is a portable ionizer, an unusual detail of his tradecraft. He explains, without opening his eyes, that the negative ions it produces help to neutralize airborne contaminants and amplify certain volatile organic compounds, making them easier to detect. It's a trick used by some high-end perfumers, repurposed here for forensic analysis, a bizarre fusion of fringe science and artistry. He waves the ionizer slowly over the opening of the bag. His nostrils flare slightly. His head tilts, like a musician tuning an instrument. Another minute passes. The silence in the room is absolute, broken only by the faint hum of the ionizer. "Ah, there." He begins to speak in a low, continuous monotone, his eyes still closed, as if he's narrating a journey. The top note is deceptive. It's synthetic. Aldehydes. The kind used in cheap, unscented laundry detergents to mask the chemical smell. But it's not from a washing machine. The application is too uniform, too deliberate. It was sprayed on, atomized, a mist. Miller jots this down. Sprayed. That explains the lack of DNA and fibers. The killer must have worn a full hazmat-style suit, handled the shirt with sterile tongs, and then sprayed it with a mist of unscented detergent to neutralize any stray particles they might have missed. A chilling, meticulous layer of anti-forensics. Underneath that, Abram continues, his focus intensifying, is the lie. A cologne. Faint, but expensive. a woody amber base. It has notes of ambronicide and iso-E super. It's a specific one, Le Labo Santal 33. Very popular, very generic for a certain kind of person. This is what he wanted you to find if you found anything. A false trail. This is the first ironic twist revealed by the scent. The killer, in his arrogance, planted a false clue that was too subtle for any machine to detect, but not for Abram. They thought they were being clever, but they were playing on a field only one person could navigate. But the truth, Abram says, leaning closer, his focus intensifying, is deeper, under the lie. He takes a long, slow breath. His brow furrows. There's soil, not local. It's arid, high in alkaline content, red clay. Arizona, maybe, New Mexico. But there's something else in the soil, a trace mineral, borax, high concentrations of it. Sanchez stops fidgeting. He's now leaning forward, hanging on every word. And there's more, Abram whispers, a note of excitement in his voice. A chemical, not a solvent, a fixative, the kind used in taxidermy to preserve tissue. And something else. One more thing. A biological marker. Not human, canine, but a specific breed. The dander has a unique protein signature. A Basenji, the African barkless dog. He falls silent. He opens his eyes, which seem clear and focused. He steps back from the table. The analysis is over. He turns to Miller. Your killer is a meticulous man who wants to appear like a generic, wealthy urbanite. But he has a secret life, one that involves arid, borax-rich soil, taxidermy chemicals, and a very rare breed of dog. He is not a ghost. He is a collector, a different kind of collector than your victim.
You can almost feel the shift in the investigation, the moment it pivots from a cold, ethereal puzzle into a tangible manhunt. The sterile examination room, which minutes before felt like the stage for a bizarre theatrical performance, now feels like the launchpad for a rocket. Abram's words hang in the air, a detailed, impossible blueprint of the killer. A taxidermy enthusiast with a Basenji who has recently been in a place with borax-rich red clay. It's a profile so specific, so absurdly detailed, that it feels both unbelievable and undeniable. Sanchez, the skeptic, is now a convert. He's furiously typing into his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. Basenji breeders, he says, half to himself, half to Miller. There can't be many. They're a rare breed, known for being barkless. They yodel instead. It's an odd choice for a pet. An unusual detail that suddenly feels like a critical piece of the puzzle. Miller turns to Abram, who is methodically wiping down his ionizer before placing it back in its velvet pouch. Taxidermy, Miller says. What kind of connection could that have to Julian Croft? Abram looks up, his gaze distant. Both men are collectors, he whispers. One collects art, objects of beauty valued for their form and provenance. The other collects life. He seeks to capture a moment of natural perfection and make it permanent. It's a different philosophy, but the same root desire, control. Perhaps they knew each other through that shared impulse, or perhaps one envied the other's collection. This becomes the central theory, a strange psychological echo. The killer wasn't motivated by money or passion in the traditional sense. It was a crime of competing obsessions. Experts still debate the concept of the collector-killer, a rare profile where the act of murder is secondary to the ritual of acquiring or possessing something from the victim, be it a physical trophy or, in this case, the act of staging a perfect, unsolvable crime scene itself. The perfectly folded shirt wasn't just a clue, it was the killer's art piece left in the gallery of his rival. Armed with this scent fingerprint,
The investigation explodes into life. The vague, useless search for enemies and business rivals is abandoned. Now it's a laser-focused data dive. Sanchez cross-references the list of registered Basenji owners in the tri-state area with members of taxidermy associations and subscribers to niche taxidermy magazines. It's a massive Venn diagram, searching for the tiny point of intersection. Meanwhile, another team tackles the soil: arid, high alkaline, borax-rich red clay. It sounds like a geology exam question. They consult with university geologists and federal land management agencies. The borax is the key. While red clay is common in the Southwest, high, naturally occurring concentrations of borax are not. The search narrows to a few specific regions, most notably a series of dry lake beds straddling the border of California and Nevada, famous for their historic borax mines. For 2 days, the squad room is a hive of activity. The information flows, gets processed, and is fed into the matrix. The list of registered Basenji owners is cross-referenced with flight manifests and car rental agreements for travel to Las Vegas or Reno in the past month. The names are then checked against the list of taxidermy enthusiasts. The list of potential suspects, which started in the thousands, shrinks to dozens, then to a handful. And then they get a hit. A single name that clicks into place in all categories. His name is Alistair Finch. The file on Finch is deceptively normal, much like Abram himself. He's a moderately successful importer of exotic hardwoods, a business that provides a legitimate reason for handling various chemicals and traveling. He lives in a quiet, upscale suburban neighborhood. He has no criminal record. On the surface, he's a ghost. But when they dig deeper, the pieces fit perfectly. He owns a registered Basenji. He's a card-carrying member of a national taxidermy guild. And flight records show he flew to Reno 2 weeks before the murder, renting an SUV for 3 days. The dry lake beds, rich in borax, are just a short drive from there. An ironic twist. Finch's hobbies, the very things that defined his secret life, became a digital breadcrumb trail that was just as damning as a fingerprint. But this is all circumstantial. They have a compelling narrative, but they have no physical evidence linking Finch to the penthouse. They can't get a warrant to search his home based on a scent profile. The Daubert standard would be an insurmountable wall. The evidence derived from Abram's nose is a powerful investigative tool, but legally, it's inadmissible hearsay. It can point them in the right direction, but it can't be the destination. Miller knows this. He knew it from the moment he made the call to Abram. The scent profile was never going to be the smoking gun. It was the map to find it. Now that they have Finch, they don't need to prove the scent profile is real. They just need to use it. They need to lay a trap. Miller gathers his team. "We can't go in hard," he says, pacing in front of the whiteboard, which is now covered in connections, all pointing to Alistair Finch's photo. "We have one shot at this. We bring him in for a voluntary interview. We don't mention Croft. We don't mention the murder. We build a world for him. A conversation based on everything Abram gave us. We'll talk about his hobbies, his dog, his travels. We'll make him feel safe. We'll make him feel seen. And then we'll see if he slips." The plan is subtle, psychological. It's a high-stakes bluff. They're going to use the invisible evidence to see if they can conjure a confession out of thin air. You can see the tension in the room. They are about to confront a man who committed the perfect murder, armed with nothing more than a ghost story told by a man with a gifted nose. The trap is about to be set, and its bait is a combination of rare cologne, desert soil, and a barkless dog. Alistair Finch walks into the interrogation room with an air of mild, almost bored curiosity. He looks just like his file, mid-50s, impeccably dressed in a tweed jacket and flannel trousers, with neat professorial glasses. He looks more like a man about to give a university lecture than a murder suspect.
He agreed to come in voluntarily after a call from Sanchez, who used the pretext of a string of recent burglaries in his affluent neighborhood. It's a classic police tactic, a soft approach to get a person of interest on their turf without raising alarm bells. The room itself is a carefully chosen stage. It's not the cold steel box of television dramas. It's a soft interview room, carpeted with cushioned chairs and a wooden table. A deliberate choice by Miller to disarm Finch, to make him feel like this is just a friendly chat. Miller and Sanchez are in plainclothes, their demeanor relaxed. On the table between them sits a single generic styrofoam cup of coffee for Finch. "Mr. Finch, thanks for coming in." "Alistair, is it?" Miller begins, his tone casual, almost deferential. Finch nods, a thin, polite smile on his lips. "We appreciate your time. As Detective Sanchez mentioned, we're just trying to be proactive about some recent property crimes, getting to know the residents, seeing if anyone's noticed anything out of the ordinary." The first 20 minutes are a masterclass in misdirection. They talk about neighborhood watch programs, security cameras, and the best local restaurants. Finch is relaxed, articulate, and helpful. He speaks in calm, measured tones, his hands resting placidly on the table. He's the model citizen. There's no sign of deception, no tells, no nervous tics. If he's the Penthouse Phantom, he's a brilliant actor. Then Miller makes the first move, a subtle pivot. "Says here in your file you're an importer of exotic hardwoods. That must be fascinating work. Do you travel a lot for that?" Finch's expression doesn't change. "Occasionally," he says, "less than I used to. Most of it can be done via catalogs and video calls now. I was in Nevada last month, briefly, consulting on a new hotel project that wanted a specific type of mesquite. He offers the information freely, a sign of confidence. He's already got his cover story." Now Sanchez steps in, his role being the friendly, slightly naive conversationalist. "Nevada, beautiful out there. My wife and I went hiking near Red Rock Canyon once. That red earth, it gets on everything." He's dangling the first piece of bait, the soil. A flicker. For the first time, you see a fractional, almost imperceptible tightening around his eyes. He doesn't take the bait. "It can be dusty, yes," he replies evenly, taking a small sip of his coffee. Miller lets the silence sit for a moment before introducing the next element of the scent profile. "You know, it's funny. My captain's a real dog person. The other day, he was telling me about these amazing dogs. They don't bark, they yodel or something. Basenjis. You have one of those, don't you, Alistair?" This time the reaction is more pronounced. His placid smile fades completely. His posture stiffens. "Yes," he says, his voice a little cooler. "She's a wonderful companion. Very clean, very intelligent." "That's what he said," Miller continues, leaning forward slightly, closing the distance. "He also said they're known for their unique scent, a sort of nutty, musky smell. Not unpleasant, just very distinct." He's not just talking about the dog. He's talking about the dander Abraham identified. He's telling Finch, in code, "We know." Finch places his cup down on the table with a soft click. The mask of the bored professor is slipping. He sees where this is going. The friendly chat about burglaries has curdled. This is an interrogation. But he's smart. He knows they have nothing concrete. He remains silent, his eyes fixed on Miller. This is a critical moment. In criminal law, this is where the Reed technique of interrogation often comes into play. It's a controversial but widely used 9-step process designed to break down a suspect's resistance and elicit a confession. Miller is using a modified version, creating psychological pressure not through accusation, but through demonstrating omniscience. He's building a trap where the only logical escape for the suspect is to confess. Now for the final, most specific piece of the trap. Miller gestures vaguely around the room. "You know, Alistair, this is a new building for us. The department just had it renovated. And the smell of the new paint, the industrial cleaners, it gives me a headache.
I'm sensitive to smells. My father was a hunter. He used to do his own taxidermy in the basement. I could never stand the smell of the chemicals he used. That sharp, acrid smell of the fixatives. Boom. He's laid all the cards on the table, but they're all invisible. The desert soil, the rare dog, the taxidermy chemicals. He hasn't accused Alistair of anything, but he has described his secret life with impossible accuracy. An ironic twist. The very thing he used to construct his alibi, his legitimate business and hobbies, is now being used to dismantle it. He's caught in a web of his own truths. Finch's composure finally cracks. A small muscle in his jaw begins to twitch. He looks from Miller's knowing, patient face to Sanchez's seemingly innocent one. He sees that this isn't about a burglary. They know. He doesn't know how they know, which makes it even more terrifying. It must seem like a magic trick, a psychic revelation. He's a meticulous planner, a man who controls every detail. And he's in a situation he cannot control or comprehend. His greatest strength, his intellect and planning, is now his greatest weakness. He's trying to logically deduce how they could possibly know these things, and he can't. The psychological pressure becomes immense. I think, he says, his voice strained, pushing his chair back slightly. I think I'd like a lawyer now. It's the right thing to say, the smart thing to say, but it's too late. The request itself is an admission of guilt. An innocent man, confused by a bizarre conversation about dogs and taxidermy, would be angry or bewildered. Only a guilty man, hearing his secrets laid bare, asks for a lawyer. Miller leans back, a flicker of victory in his eyes. He got what he wanted. He didn't get a confession, but he got the crack. He pushed the perfect killer off his perfect perch, and he knows, with absolute certainty, that the rest will follow. The invisible evidence has done its job. It has made the ghost real. The words, "I think I'd like a lawyer now," hang in the air, changing the room's entire chemical composition. The game has shifted. Finch has invoked his rights, a sacred line established in the landmark 1966 Supreme Court case Miranda v. Arizona. From this moment on, all questioning must cease. The psychological chess match is, by law, over. Miller and Sanchez exchange a look. They have him on the ropes, but the bell just saved them. The trap worked, but it didn't snap shut. An hour later, Finch's lawyer arrives. She's sharp, expensive, and radiates an aura of clinical competence. She confirms with her client in hushed, urgent tones. When she turns to face Miller, her expression is one of professional outrage. "My client was brought here under false pretenses and subjected to a bizarre and coercive line of questioning," she says, her voice like ice. "He is leaving, and if you contact him again without going through me, I will file for a restraining order against your entire department." She's right, and she knows it. They have no legal grounds to hold Alistair Finch. Their entire case is built on a foundation of inadmissible evidence, a scent profile that a judge would dismiss out of hand. They have circumstantial travel records and a list of hobbies, nothing more. You can feel the victory slipping through their fingers. The perfect killer, having had his perfect composure momentarily cracked, is now shielded by the very system designed to protect the innocent. It's a bitter, frustrating irony. He's going to walk. As Finch stands to leave, looking smug and composed once more, Miller holds up a hand. "Just one more moment of your time," he says. His voice is calm. The lawyer steps forward. Detective, he will not be answering any more questions. "He won't have to," Miller says, turning to Sanchez. "Could you bring in the items from evidence lockup 3B? Sanchez, looking confused, nods and leaves the room. Miller turns back to Finch and his lawyer. "We just need to catalog some evidence in your presence before you go. A formality." The lawyer is suspicious but sees no legal grounds to object. Finch sits back down with a look of triumphant disdain on his face. He believes he has won. He's watching the procedural death throes of a failed investigation. A few minutes later, Sanchez returns, but he's not carrying sealed evidence bags. He's carrying 3 mundane objects. He places them, one by one, on the table in front of Alistair Finch. First, a small clear glass bowl filled with reddish-brown dirt. Second, a simple framed 5x7 photograph of a regal-looking Basenji dog. And third, a small, uncorked glass vial containing a clear, viscous liquid. The lawyer springs to her feet. "What is this? This is harassment, a theatrical stunt." But her words are lost in the sudden, sharp, acrid smell that fills the small room. The odor wafting from the uncorked vial is overpowering. It's the scent of the taxidermy fixative, the scent of Alistair Finch's secret world. Finch stares at the 3 items on the table. The soil from the Nevada desert, the image of his beloved rare dog, the smell of his hidden passion, his meticulous craft. It's one thing to hear these things spoken aloud. It's another thing entirely to see and smell them here in this sterile room, stripped of their context and laid bare as evidence of his guilt. The abstract has become crushingly real. This is the ultimate unusual detail, not evidence for a jury, but a psychological weapon for the interrogation room. His carefully reconstructed composure doesn't just crack this time, it shatters into a million pieces. His face goes pale, his breathing becomes ragged. The logic, the control, the meticulous planning that defined him, it all evaporates in the face of this tangible, multi-sensory accusation. He ignores his lawyer's frantic tugging on his sleeve. He looks at Miller, and the confession comes pouring out, not in a trickle, but a flood. "He mocked me," Finch whispers, his voice choked with a venomous rage that is shocking to witness. "Croft, at a private auction, he outbid me on a specimen, a calliope hummingbird preserved in 1888, a perfect specimen. The motive, after all this meticulous planning and intellectual warfare, is revealed to be shockingly, pathetically petty. It wasn't about money, it was about respect. He called my collection, my work, a morbid roadside junk," Finch continues, his eyes wild. "He said that true perfection was in the abstract, in the clean lines of his paintings. He said I was just a man who played with dead things." This insult from a man he considered his peer in the world of collecting became an obsession. He decided to prove his superiority. The murder was an artistic statement. He synthesized a poison from chemicals used to treat the exotic hardwoods he imported. He designed and wore a sealed, clean suit. And the shirt? The final, brutal, ironic twist. The shirt was the punchline, Finch spit, a tear of pure fury tracing a path down his cheek. It was a cheap, worthless, mass-produced object. I wanted to show him that I could take the most common piece of trash and through sheer discipline and intellect, make it the centerpiece of a perfect, sterile world. I left a piece of populist art in his temple of elitist minimalism. I proved that my craft was superior. The confession is all there, recorded, undeniable. As they lead a now broken Alistair Finch out of the room, the case is officially closed. But a debate lingers among the profilers who would later study the case tapes. Did Finch confess because of the undeniable psychological pressure of Miller's trap? Or did his immense ego, the same ego that drove him to commit the perfect murder, secretly need his masterpiece to be seen and understood? Did he on some level want to be caught just so someone would finally appreciate the artistry of his work? It's a question without an answer. Miller stands alone in the interview room, the overpowering smell of the fixative still hanging in the air. The ghost has been caught, undone not by a fingerprint, a camera, or a witness, but by the invisible signature of his own secret life. He was undone by very things that made him who he was. And so the story of the Penthouse Phantom comes to a close. It's a chilling reminder that the most elaborate plans, the most perfect constructions can be unraveled by the smallest, most invisible of threads. The human element, with all its pride, passion, and unique eccentricities, can never be fully scrubbed from the scene. Sometimes the loudest clues are the ones that are completely silent, waiting for the right person to come along and simply listen.
We leave Detective Miller in his quiet victory and Alistair Finch in the prison he built for himself long before he ever saw a cell. It's a strange world we navigate, filled with invisible trails and silent stories, and we can only hope there are those with the patience to follow them. Thank you for joining me on this journey tonight. I have many more cases, many more strange and winding paths to walk you down in the future. If you found yourself captivated, a simple like or a comment goes a long way, and sharing this story with a friend who appreciates the darker, quieter corners of a mystery helps our community grow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.